The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host. We are in beautiful Barcelona, and I am sitting here with Danny Danko. He's a two-time author. You may know him from High Times, and he is also working with Champs. So it is a wonderful trade show. If you have not checked it out, it is the mothership of cannabis and everything attached to cannabis, including mushrooms, hemp, all sorts of things in the trade show. You want to check it out. It's fascinating. Danny, welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Sara.
Well, actually, and I was talking about the Champs trade shows. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, it's amazing. It's been going on for over 25 years. It's a business-to-business show. So it's, exhibitors, vendors, exhibiting their products and buyers from stores that are verified walking the trade show floor. And buyers attend for free if they can verify that they are legitimate businesses. And so there's just a lot of business being done at the convention and over 2,600 booths. So it takes 3 or 4 days to see them all. And, there's a skateboard section with streetwear and skateboard ramps. And there's, as you mentioned, there's mycology, there's cultivation, which is pretty much my forte there, and adults. Adult stuff. It's just anything that sells in smoke shops, head shops, grow stores. And we also have dispensary cultivators also coming for equipment as well. So my role is basically, since November, has been to bring in more of the cultivation seed companies, lighting brands, nutrients, grow tents and boxes, and harvesting equipment, anything really that helps with the cultivators and on the exhibitor side. And then, of course, grow shops and dispensary cultivators and smoke shop people that are selling seeds now and grow equipment on the buyer side. So yeah, it's been great. The show's been going for forever. There's the glass games involved as well. A lot of the most well-known glass blowers actually actively creating glass on the show floor and competing against each other with different themes. So it's an amazing show. I highly recommend it for business owners or people who are interested in getting into the industry and exhibiting.
It's interesting to see how much that's all changed, because when I first landed in San Francisco, that was my first real head shop experience, was going down Haight Street and checking out. And back then, if you mentioned cannabis in a head shop, you'd get kicked out.
Oh yeah, in the grow store as well. And now those same stores are selling seeds. They've got my book on the shelf and even grow equipment, and some are even selling clones, like live clones. So times have definitely changed.
Yeah, they have. I want to talk about your books, but before we do that, I want to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests. What was your first cannabis experience?
Wow, that's a good one. My first cannabis experience, actually, a buddy of mine, I was in boarding school for it was junior high boarding school in Massachusetts, and paraphernalia was very frowned upon. You could get kicked out for anything, so you didn't have like pipes or rolling papers or anything like that. So we actually smoked out of a snowbank. My friend, it was middle of winter. My friend basically like poked a hole in the snowbank and made like a makeshift bowl out of it, and we smoked, and I didn't really even get super high that first time, and it was only maybe the next time that I smoked that I actually really felt it and it hit me. But the snowbank experience was pretty unique for a first time. But it was also out of necessity and desperation because we didn't have anything to smoke out of.
Well, I think about the things that we used to smoke out of, like toilet paper rolls.
Oh God, soda cans.
Mm-hmm. Apples.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through a phase, and kids don't do this at home, but I went through this precocious phase where we were like, what are the different things that we can try to smoke to get high?
Yeah, MacGyvering.
Potpourri didn't work.
No, I remember also, like, if you were in a hotel, there was like the Bibles that were in the hotel. It's completely sacrilegious to say this, but there's paper in there. Not with writing on it, but that
Right.
works as rolling papers.
Oh, yeah. Well, my old roommate, he used to do that with the little tiny Gideons.
Right.
And it was the ones that it didn't have the writing on it because, of course, well, one, sacrilegious, but two, who wants to smoke ink?
Right.
But I remember when he told me that, and that was when I was still a pretty good girl. So I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, and I spent a lot of time with one hitters too, the little bats,
Oh,
that you would have the
yeah.
container that you'd mush the bat into and get your like one hitter, because you had to be discreet, as
Yeah.
well. You couldn't act like we act now sometimes with these big show joints and things. And you were also trying to be frugal, and if you weren't growing cannabis, you were spending money on it, and you wanted to make it last.
I still have that scarcity mindset, even though I don't have to. And my husband, Jeff, laughs at me because I'll smoke the joint to the bitter end. And he looks at me, he's like, you don't have to do that. I'm like, I know, but I remember the days where like an eighth was like so hard to come by. And those were also the days where you had to clean your weed.
Right. Yeah, pull the seeds out and the stems, and yeah, you'd end up with grams and grams of seeds.
Yeah, it's kind of like the older folks are like, back in the war when we It's like, I feel the same way.
Yeah, but that Snowbank experience really did launch a lifetime of cannabis enthusiasm in me. And people always ask me, like, don't you ever get bored or sick of it? And I'm like, I'll let you know when I do. But it hasn't happened yet.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things I love. We're always learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're only scratching the surface with this amazing healing flower that we, appreciate so much.
Yeah. In that note, how did you get into your career?
Right. So I was in Boston and going to college at BU, and I had a friend who was a cultivator at that time in a closet. And so I saw my first grow at 18, 19 years old, about that. And, I had thought that you would need acres of fields in Mexico or South America or something to grow cannabis. But he was doing it in his closet, and he had the highest quality. I mean, we're talking, 1991 or something. It was a long time ago, but he had this amazing, what we called kind bud back then. And it was so much superior to anything you could get, the Mexican or the Zona or whatever, Beasters, all those things. This was just such an exceptional product, and it was created in a closet. And so it blew my mind. And so when I moved to New York after graduating college, I really started growing. I was already dealing, buying and selling, sort of, so I wouldn't have to pay for cannabis. But then once I started growing it, I really, just fell head over heels. And and I was a dealer and a grower, but then I read a book called Shattered Lives and by Mickey Norris and Chris Conrad about the actual human toll of the war on drugs. And it really sort of ramped up the activism side for me. And then The Emperor Wears No Clothes, of course, by Jack Herer, where you just realize you're being lied to about this plant, and it's not an evil drug, and it's not something to be ashamed of. And it could save the world, and it heals people and it saves people's lives. So I became very passionate about it, and I started working for a company called Headcase, and we made hemp baseball hats in around 96, 97. I was working there, and we were the only two. There was only two companies in cannabis that were on the East Coast at the time. It was Headcase and High Times. Headcase being in Jersey City, High Times being in Manhattan. And so I got to know the people at High Times. We were all friendly. I played on the softball team, the bong hitters. And so when a job opened up at High Times, it was like, I'll take it. I just wanted to get my foot in the door. I literally was answering the telephone, breaking down boxes, helping them move offices, whatever needed to be done. Because I was passionate about it, and I was a fan of the magazine. And then little by little, once I started working there, I started writing, not even as my job, but just kind of on the side, because I had access to get my words in the mag. And I had some mentors there as well, Kyle Cushman, Steve Bloom, Dave Bienenstock, Stephen Hager. They really encouraged my writing and helped me with editing and my own words and things. And they were like, look, you can grow and you can write. You went to college and you know how to grow. And, had a deadline every month, and I had to write what I wanted to read. So I just started writing about strains and growing and all the things that I had learned from others and through trial and error of my own. And yeah, it just, just snowballed, and people are like, did you have like a plan? And I really didn't. I just had a deadline every month. And, people were like, oh, it must be great to smoke weed all day. But you had to get a job done. A magazine had to come out every month, books, calendars, events. We were doing Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam. We started doing them in the US. So there was always a lot of work to do, and you had to get the work done if you wanted to smoke weed all day. So, but it was an amazing, an amazing ride, an amazing experience. And, I got to travel the world and smoke people's cannabis all over Barcelona, where we are now, Amsterdam, the Pacific Northwest, Vancouver, Northern California, Southern California, Michigan, which has a huge, vibrant scene, and even on the East Coast with Maine and Massachusetts and New York. And yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine, I know for myself, when I've been traveling around it's like we all have, cannabis is almost our international language in many ways.
Absolutely.
But then you see, even within the states, the different cannabis cultures. It's got to be fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, whether it was like the hippies or hip hop crowd or skateboard scene, cannabis was the sort of uniting factor between uptown and downtown in New York. And, and that goes back even to the jazz era, of like the smokeasies that happened back then, and people, traveling uptown to hear jazz and smoke reefer sticks. And, that New York City in particular has a, 100-year history of cannabis as kind of a social lubricant and something that everyone kind of participates in all these cultures, the art world and the music world, and everyone kind of can unite over a joint.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a unifier in that way. It's not political, it's not partisan, it's just something you don't even have to share a language. You just put your two fingers, everyone's smiling and happy. And I think that's one of the roles this plant plays in our lives.
Growing your cannabis business is exciting until it's not. Struggling with messy operations, supply chain chaos, or tough decisions? New Holland Group is here to help. They partner with founders and execs to untangle the hard stuff and scale with intention. Thinking about expanding globally? New Holland Group helps you think big while staying grounded in compliance, culture, and safety. Strategic expansion done with purpose, experience, and integrity. Visit new-holland.group to learn more. Yeah, well, and New York. So I just went there the other year, and it was, the last time I'd been there was the 90s. So it had been a minute. Not only had New York changed a lot since I'd been there in like 96, but I didn't smell cannabis in the air the last time I was in New York. And I really did this last time. I was like, wow, I feel like I'm in San Francisco.
Yeah, well, we did legalize it in New York State and the city, and the law is pretty good. I mean, it's got you can smoke outdoors anywhere where people can smoke cigarettes, so anywhere aside from public parks. And even though I still get a little paranoid doing that, it's perfectly legal, and there's dispensaries for recreational and medical use, and we have home grow, and we're working on consumption lounges and a whole card program for social equity. So, it's not perfect, but it is a pretty decent system that we have now, and it's still evolving. It's kind of the Wild West still, but yeah, it's wild, and it's a city that it was New Amsterdam before it was New York. So
that is true.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've written a couple books.
Yes.
Let's talk about them.
Awesome. Yeah. In 2011, I wrote the official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains, which was basically like a compilation of strain write-ups that I had already done in the magazine, plus a lot of new ones. And it's a little dated now, almost 15 years old, but those are a lot of the building blocks of the modern poly hybrids and different strains that people smoke now. So late 80s, early 90s period as well, of tons of breeding development that happened in Amsterdam and all over the world, but particularly there for seed production and what became a lot of what we smoke even to this day. So that was a fun one. And then in 2018, I wrote Cannabis, A Beginner's Guide to Growing Marijuana, just in order to sort of uh, an entry level kind of book for people to get started growing. I mean, there's so much more to learn, and all the books at the time for me had been like textbooks, and I love them, Ed Rosenthal and Jorge Cervantes, and but there was just so much information to dive into, and I kind of wanted to simplify it so that anyone could just sort of get started, and still dive into those books later. But I kind of wanted a gateway into growing, because I do think it's one of the greatest ways to experience this plant is to, knowing what you're getting. I do think overfeeding is such a big thing in commercial cannabis, that you can feed the plant properly and flush the plant and get the best quality product for pennies to the dollar of what you'd pay, and also that it's fun. It's it's a great hobby. It's enjoyable, and you're learning constantly, and you're touching the plant, and whatever you're giving it, it's giving back to you, and I just love it.
Yeah, I did a little bit of growing myself the other year. I don't have the space for it anymore, although Ed Rosenthal is my neighbor, and he's always trying to come up with new ways for me to grow in the yard, even though I don't have the space. But I rent, so I have to be very careful.
Right. Yeah, but these days there's a lot of these grow tents that you can have in an apartment. LED lighting technology has advanced so much that you don't really have to worry too much about electrical use or causing a fire or any kind of problems. And reduction in amount of heat and electric use is great. And you can really, in New York, we have 6 plants per person or 12 per household. The limit being on the number of the plants, but not the size of the plants. So you can veg them out a little longer, grow bigger plants, and never have to buy weed again.
Yeah. Well, and you can play with the curing process. Like I was up at Moonmade Farms with Tina Gordon, and we were talking about the cure. And a lot of times what you're getting in dispensaries from mass-produced farms, the cure isn't as ideal as what you get from some of the craft farmers, or even, talking about whether or not you have the time, or from an economic standpoint, like the viability of doing like a vintage cure. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so important because you dry it just to get it to burn, but you cure it to bring out the nuances of the cannabinoids and the flavonoids and the terpenoids. And as they age and mature over time, you get these subtle differences in flavor and in effect, and CBD converts to CBN and becomes a little more lethargic, and the bud itself changes colors as it cures, and much like a fine wine can age. Now, I mean, I wouldn't age cannabis 20 years like a Bordeaux. It's more sort of like a Beaujolais. It should be consumed within a year or two at least, but some people do go for that long cure. You can keep it in a jar, a sealed glass jar, in a cool, dark place. You really can have cannabis last for a long period of time, and it changes over that period of time, and it gains those subtle nuances and things that really bring out like a true connoisseur's attention and enjoyment of it, because it just is a different product almost,
Yeah. I used to tell people when I was behind the bar, I was like, if it smells like hay, put it away.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole thing. You're trying to get all that like green chlorophyll-y kind of taste and things out of it. The same as with wine, it might be too sweet or too tanniny or whatever that might be, but as it ages, those things they just become more subtle.
Yeah. Emerald Village, West Hollywood, the heart of cannabis culture in Los Angeles. From the first legalized dispensaries to the nation's first cannabis cafe, WeHo leads the way. Visit legacy spots like AHHS, LAPCG, and MedMen. The fresh vibes at Calma, Urban Leaf, and Green Queen. Chill at lounges like The Artistry, OG Cannabis Cafe, Off the Charts, Pleasure Med, and The Woods. Emerald Village WeHo, the world's 5-star cannabis destination. Your elevated escape awaits. So, switching it up a little bit, you started at High Times from the beginning, pitching in, doing what needed to be done, being part of the team, but your role and your career, your trajectory grew exponentially, where you became your platform through High Times. I mean, I knew who Danny Danko was when I first started in the industry. And, you know, as we've started to evolve as an industry, and even just beyond cannabis, media has changed so much. And of course, now we've seen where High Times has closed down, they're in receivership. What are your thoughts on the media landscape, and just like how do we maintain and grow platforms to continue the conversation and represent all the different lenses that need to be represented so that we can exchange information and grow as a movement, as an industry, and also for normalization for the general public?
Yeah, well, I think the role of media is to constantly evolve and change with the times. And I think, with the issue of High Times, I think the last, 7 or 8 years or so since they were purchased, there's just been poor decision making on the business side. But, the coverage of the industries has always been there. People like Ellen and Ellen Holland and John Capetta, and there's people there that had that passion. It was just sort of on the business side where it kind of went sideways. But I think the role really is just to cover the industry responsibly and evolve with the times. If people aren't reading print, put it online, put it into social media, put it in a podcast. But evolve. AI is everywhere now. You're gonna have to harness it, or it's gonna take over. So and keeping the culture alive is the important thing. It's like this plant than making money. There's way more. Like I said, it's a life-saving thing. I've met so many people that tell me, it saved their life, it changed their life, it enhanced their experience of life. It brought them closer to their children, brought them closer to their parents. I mean, just so many stories. And at the same time, it's always been vilified, and we've been separated from our families, and we've been it's been used as the stigma to, so the job is to change that. You can cover the stock market and the business side and all of that, but the passion, the true believers, the lifers like us, that are connoisseurs and really care, and want that stigma gone forever. And never, I don't want anyone to go to jail for this plant, or even suffer in any way about their use, and to be proud, because it's not a drug. It's a healing flower that's here to help us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the High Times was said on the business side.
It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart, because I that's a 50-year-old brand. It started in 1974. It should be celebrating, like Saturday Night Live is celebrating their 50. High Times should be celebrating, and instead they're in bankruptcy. And that's just a series of bad decisions made by people who wouldn't listen to reason, or to people who know what they're doing, and thought they knew better. And but there's still time to turn that around, especially like you said, it's in receivership. If it gets into the right hands, the brand can be revived. Damage has been done. But it's still one of the oldest, if not the oldest brand in cannabis. Maybe Normal and a few others, but Normal's a nonprofit, and High Times is a media brand, and they should be the media voice. But now you have so many other voices as well. You have Cannabis Now, you have Skunk Magazine, you have all these other sources, all these podcasts and sources
Fat
of information.
Nugs too.
Fat Nugs, so even Champs, we have a magazine for the trade show. So it's important just to tell the truth and spread the word, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Ellen Holland she's not only a dear friend, she's somebody I've had just so much respect for her work and just the way with the different magazines that she's been an editor for. She's been my editor before too.
Hmm.
And just her creativity and the way she brings heart to it. She's on my Puff Puff Press podcast as well.
Nice.
And I always look forward to having conversations with her. We jokingly refer to her part on the show as Ellen's Story Hour because she's always like bringing like just so much depth to the culture and the love of the plant and really seeing the positive side of everything and the beauty of it. And I think that, you know, our colleagues that bring so much of that positivity and love, it's like they need a place to be and to share that with the public. And I'm really excited to see what she does next because she's such a talent.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was very happy to hear when she was taking over the editorial responsibilities at HD and anywhere else. I mean, she's an author and a great writer and a true believer, like, you know, and that to me is kind of like where I see the industry. It's like there's people who want to jump in and make some money and cannabis is just a widget for them. And then there's people who are truly passionate about it and just want to uplift this plant and spread the word about it because it's a very misunderstood plant.
Yeah, it is. And she and John are great stewards for that.
For sure.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where do you see it going?
Well, it's going in so many different directions. It's like, you know, one state is going this way and another state is going that way. And, you know, federally, what's going to happen, internationally, what's going to happen. I mean, look at Germany or look at Thailand. I mean, Thailand was like a 25-year to life sentence for cannabis 3 years ago. And now it's like legal and open and they have dispensaries and smoke shops and consumption lounges and all of that. So things can change very quickly. And that's one thing that I've learned. Sometimes it takes a long time and it's always still evolving. But, you know, you have states like Washington State where there's no home grow, or even New Jersey right next to us in New York, no home grow. And so they put the business into the hands of big growers, and nothing against them. I mean, I think, you know, that needs to be there. We need distillate. We need bulk cannabis. We need gummies. We need cannabis drinks. But if you love the flower and the concentrates the way that some of us do, you want the highest quality of that for your consumption purposes if you're smoking flower rather than necessarily like, you know, a drink or a gummy or a chocolate. And for that purpose, you know, distillate and bulk growing is great. But for the connoisseur who wants a properly dried and cured and well-grown thing, it's going to have to come from the craft side, and hopefully living soil, hopefully full sun, you know, that to me, it brings out really the greatest qualities of the plant. You know, you can't replicate sunshine. And the only reason we grow indoors is because of prohibition.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yes, indoor weed is great. I'm not putting it down, but you can't beat the sunshine and you can't beat the worms and the beneficial microbes and bacteria and the life within the soil and creating better soil as you grow rather than depleting the soil, you know, just improving it with organic material over time. That's the way, you know?
Absolutely.
And people think, oh, you can't do that, you know, because it's unsustainable. What we're doing, factory farming, is unsustainable. And it's only been since after World War II. You know, all these companies like DuPont and, you know, Bayer, and they wound up with all this extra nitrogen and turned it into fertilizer instead of bombs. I mean, that's why we have the factory farms that we do and all the runoff and the Salton Sea and all these damage to our environment. You can farm sustainably and feed the whole world.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's something. Going back to, you were talking about the emperor wears no clothes. Mm-hmm. I often wonder if we hadn't gotten into prohibition, because, you know, as we both know, it wasn't just about people smoking cannabis. It was also about competition with, you know, paper,
pharmaceuticals,
plastics.
Yes.
What do you think our environment would be like now?
it's sad to think about because so much damage has been done. But the cool thing is that it's reversible. And I've learned this from growing my own cannabis and vegetables and fruits and everything else, is that you can reverse it, and, there's still time. And so there's hope, but worst policies that ever existed. And I would say the prohibition of anything. I mean, something that we put into our bodies. If we want to talk about basic freedoms, there you go. It's like, I think everybody can agree on that, whether you're a consumer or not. I don't want anything like the prohibition of anything that's a personal choice that people make. And then especially with the effect on the environment, it's just atrocious and a tragedy, a travesty, that we've done this. But again, we can turn it around. We just have to go back to the basics here.
Right.
And after generation for thousands of years. I mean, this plant has been medicine for far longer than it's been vilified.
Blimburn Seeds has been a trusted name in cannabis genetics since 2002. With roots in the US and Europe, they offer premium seeds, clones, THCA flower, pre-rolls, and professional nutrients. Shipped fast, secure, and guaranteed worldwide. Explore over 1,000 strains in curated packs designed to help you grow with confidence and pride. Catch our 3-part series featuring a live interview from Barcelona with founder and CEO Sergio Martinez, only on Planted with Sara Payan. Yeah, no, that's it. When I was doing a lot of work in public education, one of the things that I would talk to people about was, even though, well, first off, people were always surprised when I would tell them we create our own endogenous cannabinoids. They're like, wait a minute, really? It's like, yeah. And that being said, even though we create our own endogenous cannabinoids, not all of us are great with phytocannabinoids. And the biggest thing with that is that's okay. Like, not only talking about critical thought, but also educating people on, if something doesn't work well for you, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be allowed.
Right. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And we still have only scratched the surface. Like, the science is way behind because no one's been allowed to do this research. It's so funny. It's like this plant that is ostracized from all other plants, and even people who study plant biology aren't even really allowed to even talk about it. So it's this weird green elephant in the room, that I remember that, like we talked about, going into the store and not being able to say bong or cannabis or anything. Adults, we don't need to act like that and pretend.
That's it. And the fact that there are non-euphoric ways to use it. Like, during the day, for me, I love THC, but sometimes during the day it's a little distracting for me if it's more than a small amount. CBG helps clear my mind because I have ADD. And sometimes if there's so much going on, I don't get anything done without that clarity.
Yeah, it's the wildest thing. People talk about like munchies, like it's the joke of cannabis. It makes you want to eat munchies, but for some people, that's a lifesaver. Like if you're going through chemotherapy or you have nausea due to AIDS wasting syndrome or something, eating is the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
And a plant that can make you hungry is a miracle. And the same plant can suppress your appetite if you extract a different cannabinoid or so the THCV and there's just so much CBG that you mentioned. And I mean, we're really just scratching the surface, and I think, that's interesting and important. But again, it's not for everyone, but there's so many people that it could benefit that don't use it.
It's true. I mean, I've always loved cannabis, but I really understood the medicinal applications when I was going through cancer, and that's how when I first got my card. And I got to tell you, even though the idea of chemo was scary, getting my card and going into a dispensary was exciting. I was like, this is like an adult candy store in that moment, because for so many years it was, well, it's getting a hold of my guy and waiting to see if they showed up, or maybe they weren't doing it anymore and they changed numbers and you didn't hear from them ever again. And here's a place where you could go in, have an open conversation. Although the first time I treated it like going into a head shop. I was like, can I sing? Can I say
Right.
cannabis?
Yeah. Well, we have PTSD from all the trauma that we experienced from the stigmas and the fear of even talking about this thing. And you mentioned the endocannabinoid system. We have receptors in our body for this. It's in breast milk, mother's milk. I mean, I feel like there's people are actually cannabinoid deficient if they're not consuming cannabis a lot of times, and so and I think years from now, Dr. Lester Grinspoon said this too. He said, in the future, cannabis is going to be viewed like penicillin, like a miracle thing, a miracle drug, but we're just not there yet, and that's the job of us as podcasters, as media, as evangelists for the healing flower.
Yeah, and we have to keep the conversation going because we are seeing some shifts in the media. Mainstream media, I've been noticing there's been a lot of hit pieces on cannabis lately. And I'm wondering where that's coming from because we were seeing so much normalization. Hell, I had Self Magazine get a hold of me to ask, about cannabis just a couple years ago in a positive light. And now we're starting to see like a National Geographic, a respected media outlet, putting out these very biased and I'll call it a puff piece because I can say that it's my podcast. But it was really biased, and as somebody whose grandfather was a member of the board of National Geographic, I expect more from them than
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's weird that, there's always a backlash when, a movement makes an advance. There's always going to be a backlash. We have parts of our government, elements of our government, and elements of our media that are intertwined, and elements of these pharmaceutical companies that just have billions of dollars to spend and advertise in certain magazines and so is it quid pro quo, or are the people at the magazines just sort of mind readers and figuring that this is what's wanted, or is there actual collusion happening? I have my feelings and thoughts about it, but yeah, it's a shame when, especially something like National Geographic, so respected, does something like that. They're trying, I imagine, in their newsroom, they're trying to be balanced. They're trying to, show both sides, and so they're going to look for the harms. They're going to look for the negative stuff because it makes them feel like they're, impartial in some way, or they're warning people who might think like, it's perfectly safe and anyone should do it, and there's nothing wrong, so I can see where that's coming from, but I do think it's shameful and wrong and misguided, to say the least. And then if it's willful, and created on purpose, then it's even more egregious.
It is. And I think it's also a call for us as a movement and an industry to have balanced conversations so that we're at the table rather than on the menu. Like in the past few years, I know there's been a lot of arguments about whether cannabis hyperemesis is real. I do know people who have it. Mm-hmm. And back in 2013, a dear friend of mine who was an emergency doc in Colorado called me and was like, hey, have you seen this? I'm getting guys coming in, young men, who are having cyclical vomiting that is only being soothed by a hot shower. And the only thing I can see that they have in common is that they all smoke a lot of weed. And this is somebody, okay, this doctor, one of my best friends, she is the person that I smoked cannabis with for the first time. She doesn't have any problem with it, so she's not trying to build up a case against it.
Right.
She was just very puzzled by the whole thing.
Well, it is a thing that exists. I have friends that have gone through that as well. But is it caused by cannabis, or is it caused by pesticides? Is it caused by a concentration of neem oil? I don't know, and I haven't experienced it personally either myself. And I've smoked a lot of cannabis and concentrates. But I do think that concentrates are playing a role, because we never heard of that syndrome until sort of dabbing and concentrating, especially using something like butane or hexane. Those are solvents, and they're not just flammable, but explosive solvents. I mean, they're dangerous poisons if you consume them. And knowing whether it's all been purged out or not is especially in an unlicensed environment, an untested environment, you don't know. I mean, so that's my suspicion, is that it's not actually caused by cannabis, but by something that's on the cannabis that's concentrated into, these dabs in one way or another. Because I don't think it happens from flower or from rosin. I think it's mostly the solvents or the neem or the whatever's sprayed onto these plants, because there's a lot of that going on as well.
Right.
Another reason to grow your own.
Yeah.
And all this, other stuff that's out there. It's like you don't even know where it came from or what it is. And one of the good things about the licensed, legal stuff without all the the hoops we have to jump through and the overregulation is the testing. And I support that 100%, especially because people who are going to have a bad experience with an unlicensed edible, for instance, that you don't know if it's 50 milligrams or 5 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams. If you make it yourself, you're just hoping you get it right. But when you're testing it and it's in that 5 milligram range, you're less likely to have a bad experience. And those bad experiences turn people off sometimes forever.
Oh yeah.
And it's a shame, because one experience like that shouldn't turn you off entirely to accepting the plant. And there's so many ways to consume it without smoking now, like gummies and chocolates and sodas and everything. So if one way doesn't work, maybe another will.
Yeah, well, and that's during the pandemic. We would hang out in our garden. We'd invite friends to hang out. So we would do the al fresco hangout, so that we could be together and not worry about getting each other sick.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we would do is make cannabis cocktails. Because a lot of our friends were either new to cannabis or had been away from it for a while, or had had a bad experience in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and had decided that maybe it wasn't for them. And doing the Lotus cannabis cocktails outside hanging out changed a lot of people's minds. I think having the different formats and encouraging people to experiment with formats that resonate for them, there's a lot behind that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We have this culture that accepts alcohol as like just completely acceptable and in any way. And alcohol, and I drink alcohol. It's not,
Same.
But it's a poison.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We don't have receptors for alcohol. Alcohol crushes our liver and like hurts our bodies. But it's fully accepted. And then you have cannabis, no hangover. You're still smiling at the end of the night. And you somehow there's receptors in your body for it, and the whole endocannabinoid system. I think a lot of people just don't believe that it's true. So I challenge anyone who doesn't to just Google it and like figure it out, do the research, because it's there. And it's not us as like cannabis supporters saying that. It's doctors who've done the research and studied it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a way for people, especially if they're using too much alcohol or opiates or, any of these things that are out there. It's such a safer alternative for any of those things that even if, there are these syndromes good and things that can happen in bad experiences, the good and way overwhelmingly overtakes any of the harm.
Absolutely. It's just good to know if something happens that you're going to be okay. Just stop doing that. Right. I mean, that's when I would do things with people with CBD, like CBD for the longest time. It was like, oh, it's amazing. It was like, we always joked. It was like the dad of my big fat Greek wedding with Windex, like squirted on everything. And then we started to realize, hey, some people are sensitive to it. It gives them the blues. It makes them a little more anxious. Does it make it bad? No, you just shouldn't use it. That's all. I mean, it's as simple as that. And having those conversations, it takes away the scariness and the stigma and making people think, oh, it's bad. It's like, no, let's have a balanced conversation about it. This plant does way more good than it does harm. And even when the outcome is not optimal, it's not going to kill you.
Right. You might just need a nap.
You might just need a nap. You might just need to change what you're using. And actually, with that, what's one of your favorite cultivars right now? What are you digging on?
Wow. I mean, my desert island one I always say is strawberry cough because I love growing
Classic.
it. I love smoking it. I love growing it. And I just love the feeling, the effect. It's not going to win any awards. Typically, it's not like the frostiest or the highest testing, but it makes me feel good, and the effect to me is so important. And it tastes good and burns good and all that too.
I love the aroma.
And the aroma, it leaves behind like almost like an incense smell in a room. If you leave and go back in the room, it's like a pleasant, nice smell. It's not like a gassy, ranky or candy kind of thing. It's really just like it's like bergamot or cedarwood or something, which I love. I love the sort of floral aspect of it. But, I also love the gassy stuff and the candy. I love it all, and I just like when it's properly grown and it burns clean and tastes good, because so much weed, I call it pretendica. It's like it looks good and it smells good, and then you grind it up and you burn it and it just tastes like charcoal and hot smoke.
Yeah.
And that to me is it's an accumulation of metals and minerals and things that just shouldn't be there, but when you grow in bulk tend to be there. And I just more modern kind of cultivars I like. I mean, all the ChemDog family stuff, ChemD, Chem 91, Sour, of course. I live in New York, Sour Diesel, the New York
Right?
Diesel, and the Piff, the Haze. We have the Uptown Haze in New York, and I love that too. And I think just for different situations, like Haze during the day, Chems at night, strawberry cough all the time. To me, it's inspirational too. It's like it's very artistic, and like it makes me want to create something.
Yeah.
Which I love, especially as I get older. I'm like, I want the stuff that high and not so much like buzzed or low or in the couch.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, for me, I'm the opposite. I'm an indica all day sort of person.
Nice. Well, you were saying you PTSD or ADHD.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel a lot of friends that do the have ADHD.
I probably have some PTSD too. I mean,
we all do.
Right.
We all do. But yeah, I think indicas are helpful for that, because it just sort of calms and slows everything and helps with the ability to focus.
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition, and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all. Yeah, the two favorites, they only came across it once, and it's still in my dreams. And then one called Burkle.
Burkle.
Yeah,
Wow.
Bubba Kush Purple Urkel Cross.
Wow.
And it was really, really purpley. Like it looked like lavender, like a light lavender, and it was really sweet. And that's what I used to like to smoke before I go on stage.
Nice.
Because it just gets you in like that groove.
Perfect. I love it.
But I love talking about just like everybody has all these different choices, which is why we have to have the full spectrum.
Yeah.
And I mean, and with people, it's like you see here in Barcelona the full spectrum of people who are interested in cannabis. What are you digging on this week with Spanibus? Like, what have you been excited about? What's your experience been? I
mean, I love the social clubs and the whole vibe of that. I think it's all very civilized. You can have a beer and a smoke, and you can relax and chill. And, the food here, of course, is always like top notch and amazing. And they have a joy for life, living, a joie de vivre, where it's like, I want the food to taste good. I want, the vibes to be right. And so there's just a really nice energy here that and people are here from all around the world too. So it's like, one thing I have learned from cannabis as well is that the answer in nature is diversity. You need new things, and the best breeding happens when you cross things that are very different from each other. Something that's very indica dominant with something that's very sativa dominant will create hybrid vigor, and it'll create something new and interesting and different. And that's where you find the outliers and the most interesting things is in that first filial generation. We call it the F1 hybrid. And that is nature reinforcing diversity and evolution as a species and as a planet, as humanity in general. So even cannabis even preaches diversity, which I think is amazing. And I think one of the things here, getting back to sort of Spain, is that they appreciate the diversity of different fruits and vegetables, whereas we have a monoculture kind of thing going on in America, where it's just this one kind of banana, just this one kind of thing, and they celebrate the cornucopia of the the bounty of all these different things, and they're usually grown organically and properly, and they taste better and they feel better. And so I love that aspect of it, and it extends in some ways to the cannabis as well, and the hash, and I love the import hash, like the Moroccan, because we just don't get that as often back home. We have tons of hash that we make, but we don't have that like earthy traditional terroir that you get from the real 00 Moroccan, or that chocolatey kind of aspect. So I appreciate that stuff as well, that we don't get our hands on as much.
Yeah, I have to try some of that before I leave. I've been running around so much talking to everybody that even when we were at Choco the other night, I was like, oh, well, I've got to go on to the next thing. And I was like, okay, we are taking a few days after we're done with all of this to really experience and just, instead of me asking people questions, just like quietly getting into everything and just enjoying it.
Absolutely. And they had hash culture here before they even had the flower culture, because their proximity to North Africa and Morocco and all that. And so that's interesting too. Every once in a while you get handed a joint that might have tobacco and hash in it, which is a surprise to some Americans, because we don't mix it like that back home. So I always ask, is this pure? That kind of thing.
They always wonder how we can smoke it pure.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember that in Amsterdam too. Like, oh my God, you're just smoking pure all day. It's, that we mix it with tobacco to spread it out and sort of just, smoke it like
exchange to have those conversations too. And then I have to ask you a question, because for our listeners, we had an amazing lunch together earlier this week.
Oh my God.
Did you smoke beforehand?
I did not smoke beforehand. We
Neither did I. I kind of wish I did, though.
I came straight there, basically almost from the airport. I mean, we arrived that day, but that's in my like top 5 dining experiences of my life for a lunch too, not even a dinner. Just incredible. Yeah. The name of the place is appropriate. Succulent.
Yeah. Oh,
incredible.
My God, it was so good.
Yeah.
It's Sergio, anything that man puts in front of me food wise, I will always trust after that experience.
Right. And that's the thing about cannabis is, and getting back to Dr. Grinspoon, he said the same thing. It's an enhancer. Mm-hmm. So whether you're going out for a nice dinner, it's going to enhance that. You're going to see a movie or some animated film or something, it's going to enhance that. Love making, for instance, it can enhance that. So it's an enhancer, like, and so many people don't see it that way. Even some people who smoke it don't see it that way, but that's what it is, and that's medicinal in and of itself. It makes your life better. I mean, like that's enhancing your life is like, I mean, it's better than money. It's better than riches. It's like, you can't buy that,
Yeah, you could be sitting on a mountain of gold, but if you don't have that sparkle in your heart and soul.
Right. I would rather have, great cannabis than great wealth, personally, if I had to choose between them.
Same. So what are some things that you're excited and hopeful about in the future?
Well, I'm excited just that it's hard to measure the things that don't happen, but the amount of people not going to jail for cannabis, the amount of families that are staying together, the amount of dogs that aren't being shot, in these raids, that brings me a ton of joy. Like, I can't quantify that, but I know that it's there, and I know that the absence of those things happening is less harm to peaceful people. We're warriors for this plant, but we're peaceful about it, and we've been locked up and beaten and thrown into jail and separated from our families and ostracized and in ways large and small. I mean, people can't get transplants of organs if they're smoking cannabis. People can't, and that, to me, those are the things. That's why I'm passionate about this. I love cannabis, but I also love what it does for the world and for people, individuals that I've met, and for me, and so I look forward to a time when no nonviolent cannabis person gets arrested for anything, and where the stigma is gone. We're not trying to make cannabis, some miracle that just doesn't, does nothing bad to anything. And, but the things that have happened to us because of it are way inappropriate and like awful in ways large and small. I mean, people not getting a scholarship in college, people getting kicked out of school, and these things are happening all the time over that. So
Yeah.
And so that brings me a lot of joy, and I think the future holds more of that. I love Last Prisoner Project because their organization is working towards the last prisoner, and if that miracle happens, they're not an organization anymore.
Yeah.
And that brings me a lot of joy. You can make money, you can be in the stock market, you can grow a bunch of cannabis, you can walk around like you're hot shit, but ultimately, just freedom for the plant is to me the most important thing, and freedom for the people who love it.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been such a treat getting to spend time with you. But we're on two separate coasts, so you don't come over to California as much as you do.
I do. It's been a while. I mean, I did a lot more when I was at High Times because I would be there for harvest season, covering, the grows and all that. And I got a lot of joy out of that as well. But it's been a little while, but I always love it. Northern California, Southern California, two different and kind of distinct cultures, but both, I've enjoyed over the years. And and that's, the birth of all of that is the Bay Area. I mean, that's where it all really started. And it was also the gay rights activists, Dennis Perone and people like that, who learned from their fight for freedom, how to fight for cannabis freedoms as well. And, that should not be discounted. I mean, that all began in the Bay. And, the American cannabis culture and so much of the breeding and the growing happened in Northern California and Pacific Northwest, and even the people who fled America and ended up in Vancouver and that area, as well as like draft dodgers in the late 60s and early 70s, were some of the people who brought growing culture and cultivations to those regions and really changed the face of this plant for everyone.
That was my first cafe experience. 2001, Blunt Brothers.
Right. Hastings in Vancouver.
Yeah. And meeting somebody there who had scored some weed in Stanley Park and shared it with me.
Amazing.
It was
amazing.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, that was a pioneering area of, at the time, for the culture and still is. And, amazing. Cannabis culture.
And I know most people know how to reach out to you because you are here. You have been here. You have an enormous following. But for those who want to follow you on social media, and if you haven't, you should, how do they do that?
Yeah, so Instagram is Danny Danko HT, just like High Times, Danny Danko HT. And then everything else is just Danny Danko on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and everywhere. Blue Sky. I don't know. I'm out there. The first book is out of print, the strain book, but the beginner grow book is on Amazon. I sell it on eBay. If you want to get it signed, you can buy it directly from me. I encourage it if you're interested in growing, because it can be daunting, but you can do it and it's fun and you'll love it.
Check out the book.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Until next time.
Yes.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please Give us a review, share it with a friend, let us know what your favorite episodes are, and if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sarah Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sarah on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsarah.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.